What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Beastiary. My name's Blak, and today's topic will be something that I fucking love, man. Or at least related to something that I love. Now, anybody who knows me knows I'm a straight up undead head. I love zombie movies, zombie lore. You know, anything having to do with the undead that's my shit. And you know, I'm a huge fan of George Romero. From Night of the Living Dead, etc. I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, Z Nation, all those great series. And, I've probably got close to 200 zombie movies in my collection by themselves. And it inspired what I wanted to do this episode on. But since most people already know, what a zombie is and the difference between, your plague-driven, flesh-eating zombies and your voodoo mind slave zombies. They know the difference between those, and since there's already so much information out there and there would be too much to put into one episode, I thought, well, let's go back a little bit and let's think about what inspired the zombie lore. And it got me to thinking about, George Romero was inspired by Richard Matheson's book, I Am Legend, which is a great book, by the way. I'm also a fan of The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. It's a very good movie if you like, the older classic horror movies. But, well, I thought I'd go even further than that. What was that book inspired by? What inspired the creatures in that book? I mean, the creatures in I Am Legend, they were vampires, and, well, apparently, what inspired the belief in vampires was, among a whole mixture of a plethora of other shit, were a creature called a Revenant. And so I decided that's what I'm going to do today's episode of the Beastiary on Revenants. I've gathered some information on the subject, and I hope you enjoy it, and maybe you'll learn something. Well, a Revenant is a visible ghost or animated corpse that is believed to have returned from the grave to terrorize the living. Now, the word Revenant is derived from the Latin word, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher a lot of these translations, but just bear with me. Reveniens, meaning returning. Now, vivid stories of revenants arose in Western Europe, especially in Great Britain, and were later carried by Anglo-Norman invaders to Ireland during the High Middle Ages. Revenants were also known in old Irish Celtic mythology as the Niamh, I guess is how you say it. I'm not, like I said, I'm gonna butcher these translations. I'm not very bilingual, I can barely speak English. I mean, let's though later legend and folklore depict revenants as returning for a specific purpose, for example, revenge against the deceased's killer, their killers, or some wrongdoing in life. In most medieval accounts, they return to harass their surviving families and neighbors. Revenants share a number of characteristics with folkloric vampires. Many stories were documented by English historians in the Middle Ages. William of Newburgh wrote in the 1190s, quote, "It would not be easy to believe that the corpses of the dead shall sally, I know not by what agency, from their graves, and should wander about to the terror and destruction of the living, and again return to the tomb, which of its own accord spontaneously opened to receive them. Did not frequent examples occurring in our own times suffice to establish this fact, to the truth of which there is abundant testimony?" Now, medieval stories of revenants, they all have common features. Those who return from the dead are usually wrongdoers in life, in their life, often described as wicked, vain, or unbelievers, sacrilegious. Often the revenants are associated with the spreading of disease amongst the living, sort of like modern day zombies. The appropriate response is usually exhumation, digging up the graves, followed by some form of decapitation and burning or removal of the heart. Several stories state that revenants drink blood. For example, in Historia Rerum Anglicarum, the corpse of one revenant is reported to have been found in the grave swollen and suffused with blood. When it was pierced, a stream of blood flew out of the wound. Now, this part of the story is paralleled in many accounts of alleged vampires, and the phenomenon it depicts is, in fact, known to occur frequently as part of the natural process of decomposition. Revenants are therefore another example of the widespread historical belief in vampires. Well, it says Augustine Calmet, I guess is how you pronounce his name, conducted extensive research on the topic in his work entitled, and once again, I'm gonna butcher this, Traité sur l'apparition des esprits et sur les vampires ou les revenants de Hongrie, I guess is how you say it, where he relates to the rumors of men at the time. It says, they see, it is said, men who have been dead for several months come back to earth, talk, walk, infest villages. I'll use both men and beasts. Suck the blood of their near relations, make them ill, and finally cause their death, so that people can only save themselves from their dangerous visits and their hauntings by exhuming them, impaling them, cutting off their heads, tearing out their heart, or burning them. These revenants are called by the name of Upir, or vampire, that is said to say leeches, and such particulars are related of them, so singular, so detailed, and invested with such probable circumstances and such judicial information, that one can hardly refuse to credit the belief which is held in those countries, that these revenants come out of their tombs and produce those effects which are proclaimed of them. Calmet compares the views of the Greeks and the Egyptian ancients and discovers the old belief that magic could not only cause death but also evoke the souls of the deceased as well. Revenants were then ascribed to sorcerers whom sucked the blood of victims, inevitably causing their death. He further states how some instances of revenants mentioned in the 12th century in England and Denmark were similar to those of Hungary, but, quote, in no history do we read anything so usual or so pronounced as what is related to us of the vampires of Poland, Hungary, and Moravia. In Christianity, Calmet claims that during his lifetime, in the mid-1700s, the Greeks contested that bodies of the excommunicated would not decay in their graves or tombs. He puts the invention of the Christian view of revenants in the Middle Ages by the Greek, it's one of them words again, schismatics, or whatever that word is, suggesting further how this idea of revenants was used to authorize and confirm them as bodies of the excommunicated who separated from the Church of Rome during their lifetime. Now, he explains, and quote, that the incorruptibility of a body was rather a probable mark of the sanctity of the person and a proof of the particular protection of God, extended to a body which during its lifetime had been the temple of the Holy Spirit, and of one who had retained in justice and innocence the mark of Christianity. King James wrote in his dissertation of demonology. The idea that a demonic entity could possess a dead body and have sexual relations with women being one of the methods used by the incubi. Now, Revenant shares some similarities with zombies in modern fiction. This is a result of contemporary depictions of zombies having evolved from vampire fiction, especially Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend, which was a major influence on the zombie film Night of the Living Dead. The original folklore about zombies had less in common with Revenant legends. Similarities are also obvious with the, and here's another one of those words, Etringanger, I guess is how you say it, literally again walker, meaning one who walks after death of Norse mythology. Well, here's an easier word. I know what a draugr is. Although the draugr is usually far more powerful, possessing magical abilities, and most notably is not confined to a death-like sleep during the day, although it does usually stay in its burial mound during the daylight hours, and will resist intruders, which renders the destruction of its body a dangerous affair to be undertaken by individual heroes. Consequently, stories involving these undead creatures often involve direct confrontations with the creature, in which it often reveals to be itself to be immune to all conventional weapons. Such elements are absent from the Revenant lore, where the body is engaged in its inert state in daylight, and it's rendered harmless to where they can do what they need to do. They can deal with it right there. And that's just a little taste of all the things that I found. I mean, there's no way that I could fit all that information into this video, so I hope that was enough. Well, I guess we'll end it here for now. I mean, I don't have any stories or encounters to go along with it, but if I find anything else, I'll put out a part 2 to this, and hopefully we'll learn a little bit more. Thank you for visiting the Beastiary. My name is Blak. Take it easy.